Hey everyone, I'm Majiin and welcome into World Tour Weekly, your one-stop shop for all competitive Flesh and Blood news. We've had a bit of a slower weekend, so less to report on that front, but we have a lot of really cool things to look forward to, so that's going to be the focus of today's episode. Let's get into it. First up on our list of exciting upcoming events is the release of Mastery Pack Guardian. The product releases this week on the 8th and promises to give the Guardian class a lot of high-impact cards, hopefully giving it a much-needed shot in the arm. I personally expect to see some pretty cool things out of Valda, especially considering a lot of these Seismic Surge Matters type cards in the set. She also has a pretty strong specialization with Put 'em in their place. It's a pretty big attack, and although it's not disruption in the traditional sense, as it doesn't put your opponent card negative, it still makes it really awkward for decks to decide how much to block this card. If you don't block enough, you might get stranded with too many cards in hand that you can't use, block too much, and you might end up with a 2-card play that doesn't really do anything. Although the winner for the card I'm going to hate playing against the most award has to go to Test of Iron Grip. I will be so scared to send a Go-Again attack at a Guardian because they can just block with this, win the clash, and completely torpedo the rest of your turn. I understand that there is a possibility that you win the clash and they lose an entire card, but I tend to play classes with a lot of non-attack actions, so I foresee a lot of discarding in my future. A card that I see slipping under the radar a little bit is Tectonic Instability. Guardians have a tendency to struggle to convert 5-card hands when given full tempo. It also isn't unusual for decks playing against Guardian to block out, arsenal a power card, and look to go off big on the following turn. Cards like Tectonic Instability can really help you there. When you have a 5-card hand as Guardian, not only can you send a little bit of disruption, but it helps you fully convert your hand and gives you Seismic Surge tokens for the next turn. When you don't have a 5-card hand, it's also just a blue block 3. It seems like everything you could want for the class. Now, I admittedly don't have a lot of experience playing the Guardian class, but this one seems like a winner to me. Alright, moving on to our next topic of conversation, we have the Living Legend format, which has been ramping up in importance for players ever since the Battle Hardened at Pro Tour Singapore. I discussed it last week and will no doubt discuss it many more times in the future, but Living Legend is going to be one of the formats played at the World Championship later this year. This means that players will be paying more and more attention to the format as time goes on. This lines up really well with the schedule of events for the rest of the year, as ProQuest and Skirmish Season both offer the Living Legend format. Due to its rising relevance in the competitive scene, we're going to go over the Living Legend Battle Hardened at Pro Tour Singapore for this week's Metagame Minute. Since our last Living Legend tournament of note, we have a lot more heroes which are considered viable in the LO format. When you add in some massive balance changes to the top decks like Starvo and Chain, you end up with an entirely new format for players to explore. There were quite a few different heroes on display for this tournament, but it seems like players mostly gravitated towards the generally accepted strong aggro decks like Briar, Dio, and Zen. Anyone who has played the tournament before will notice that Chain and Starvo are way down in representation compared to where they usually are. We'll get to it in a second, but not a single copy of either of them made it into the top 8. Prism was the 4th most popular deck, but also didn't put any copies into top 8. In fact, when we shift over to looking at the top 8 bracket, you'll see that the only illusionist that made it was actually a Dromai. Briar, Zen, and Dio all made it into the final cut, but not in any insane numbers. After that, it's pretty much all wildcard decks, which is not something you usually see doing well in the Living Legend format. Icelander and Dromai are decks that aren't strangers to the LO format, but they're definitely not considered to be top decks, so it's nice to see them make a deep run. On the other hand, Ira and Nu were decks that I didn't expect to see at all. The new deck was pretty reminiscent of the CYB new decks that we saw around the World Championship Osaka days, with a little bit of fatigue help from Drone of Brutality. Naive's Ira deck looked a lot like the Flick Knives Zephyr Needle deck that we saw get banned right before 100 released. It's also got a couple of fun Living Legend staples like Belittle thrown in for good measure. I didn't know that the deck was quite on the power level necessary to compete in the format, so it was super cool to see it take the entire thing down. It gives me a lot of hope that there are still some exciting decks kind of hiding beneath the surface that players are going to have to dig around to find and hopefully make their way into Worlds. Like I mentioned before, Bravo Star of the show didn't have the tournament result that we've come to expect from him, likely because of a lot of his cards being restricted and banned. Both Mastery Pack Guardian and Super Slam are Guardian themed set though, so I expect for him to get at least a little bit of help. Chain, on the other hand, also didn't convert, but likely won't be able to use any of the new products, so I expect him to take a backseat to the other aggro decks in the format, like Briar, Dio, and Zen. I'm definitely holding out hope that Icelander ends up being one of the better decks in the format because she's my favorite deck in all of Flesh and Blood. Icelander actually made it all the way to the semifinals before being dispatched by our eventual champions, so maybe there's still hope. Alright, let's take a step back from the LL format and discuss what's coming in the upcoming weeks. World Tour Auckland is this weekend with some pretty special events being played. The event starts out on Friday with the beginning of Calling A, which is Welcome to Wraith Unlimited Sealed. On Saturday, Calling B kicks off, which is the first Classic Constructed event with Mastery Pack Guardian legal. Also on Saturday is the day 2 of Calling A, which is going to be Alpha Welcome to Wraith Draft. As I understand, this is going to be the last time we see Alpha Welcome to Wraith in an event, so it's pretty exciting for all the players who make it. On Sunday is day 2 of the Classic Constructed Calling and also Arcane Rising Limited First Edition Battle Hardened. Make sure you don't miss the stream for this event because you get back-to-back Calling Day 2s and also Alpha Welcome to Wraith, and that's pretty cool. The week following that is Calling Kansas City, and the week following that is Calling Copenhagen, both Classic Constructed events. It's pretty nice that we're going to get back-to-back weekends of Classic Constructed events to see just how much Mastery Pack Guardian can shake up the format. If that wasn't reason enough to tune in, we're also going to get expansion slot spoilers for Super Slam during the live streams of the events, so make sure you tune in not to miss out. These back-to-back event weekends aren't just important for spectators though, they're also really important for all the players looking to make a run at Player of the Year. With the season getting closer to a close, the race for World Tour points is only heating up. Taking a look at the all-around leaderboard for Player of the Year, Brody Spurlock is pretty clearly ahead of the pack in first place. Michael Hamilton isn't too far behind though, only being down about 20 points. With a very strong finish at Worlds and some other larger events, players could definitely still catch up, although my money is on one of those two to take down the $25,000 prize. When we check out the race based on each region, it gets even more interesting. Okay, maybe not in the Americas region, as Brody and Michael kind of have the first 2 spots locked up, but the battle for third place is really close, with 3 players basically tied and a couple more right behind them. The Europe leaderboard is close all the way down, with Jacob Clemens and Tommaso Vecito only a small bit ahead of the rest of the pack. Probably hard for them to feel safe though when 2 Pro Tour champions are hot on their heels. Last but certainly not least is the Asia Pacific race, where all 3 top players are within 1 point of each other. Pudding Tam, Singapore Pro Tour champion Shiroi Wu, and Nick Butcher are neck and neck as we move closer to the final Tier 4 tournament of the year. Not only that, but Shoma Yamamura and Xavier McLean are just one good finish away from closing the gap. The last couple days of the race are going to be super exciting, and with the $100,000 prize pool, it's not like the players are playing for pocket change. A single placement higher at Worlds could mean the difference of tens of thousands of dollars. For the end of this episode, I wanted to highlight Collector Week, which has been a really fun way to show off more of the collecting aspect of the game and not just the competitive side. It's been really fun to check out the Collector Week interviews and see people's crazy collections and hear about their favorite acquisitions. There was also a Drip Tech Battle YouTube video here on the main channels, which was a lot of fun to watch, so make sure you check it out. Alright, that's all for this episode. Make sure you tune in to the live stream for the next couple weekends as it's jam-packed full of events. Thank you for watching. I'm Majiin, and I'll see you next time on World Tour Weekly.